to Friends Talking Nerdy. This is Tim the Nerd, and seated next to me we have Professor Aubrey. And this week we're going to talk about the television show that allowed me to be cool in junior high for one day, The Simpsons.
In junior high, it allowed you to be cool for one day.
Yes, because I was the first kid in school who came to school with a Simpsons shirt. It was a Simpsons sweatshirt, and initially when I went to school that day, I was nervous that I would get goofed on or whatever because most of it was a white sweatshirt with the picture of the family on there, and then Bart Simpson was like centered and had a slingshot and everything. And I just thought the white looked bad on me. I'm not a bright colors person like that. But everybody, that was the year the show really got hot, and everybody was like, "Oh my god, that's cool, that's cool." And I'm like, "Whoa, yeah, it is."
Because you were in middle school at that point, yeah?
Yeah.
The Simpsons, yeah, they're truly awesome. 36 season, 37 season?
Something like that. There are close to 40 years on the air, which is insane. Yeah, it is bizarre that there's been a form of entertainment that's been around since my junior high year, and now all of my kids are well past junior high into adulthood.
Mm-hmm.
So what we thought we would do here this week is talk about our 5 favorite episodes, especially because we are recording, of course, if you don't know already, and this is your first episode of Friends Talking Nerdy, we are recording in Portland, Oregon, home of Simpsons creator Matt Groening.
That is absolutely right. And we have a lot of landmarks that people can come and enjoy.
Yeah, a lot of street signs. Like one of the first things I did 10 years ago now. This is my 10-year anniversary of being in Portland, Oregon.
Oh, wow.
Minus the 4 months in Maine. But one of the first things I did with the camera on my phone, went to Flanders Boulevard and took a picture of the street sign. It was like, stupid Flanders Boulevard.
Yeah. Well, now there's the Ned Flanders Bridge that goes over 405 in downtown. It's a pedestrian and bicycle bridge.
All right. Yeah. There's a lot of names in town here that were lifted for Simpsons characters in one way, shape, or form. Terwilliger, Lovejoy. I'm sure there are more off Flanders, stupid Flanders. But what we wanted to do, like I mentioned, is talk about our 5 favorite episodes and why we enjoyed them. But before we do that, general question. What first turned you on to The Simpsons?
I don't know. It's been so long. I can't even remember life before The Simpsons.
Ah.
You know what I'm saying? I don't know.
Instead of Jesus in your heart, it's Homer.
Yeah, kind of.
Yes.
Kind of.
Well, for me, it was definitely the type of humor that I came to enjoy. Now, a lot of the writers on that show had histories in other shows like Saturday Night Live, The Tonight Show starring Johnny Carson, and also working on like the Harvard Lampoon. So real subversive, funny stuff. And I've always been attracted to that. Now, my mother was quite the opposite. So in the early years of The Simpsons, I didn't get a chance to watch every single week. It was more of a situation to where if Ma was out of the house that particular Sunday or Thursday, whatever day it was on in the early days, that's when I got a chance to watch. No, that was the thing. I believe it was on Thursdays because they wanted to counter program it against the Cosby Show.
Mm-hmm. Because it was on Fox, right?
Yes.
And it was one of Fox's first hits, I think.
That Married with Children, the Tracy Ullman Show, which the Simpsons spun off from, was I would say modest hit. It was probably more. It's probably more accurate to say it was like a critical hit.
Mm-hmm, right.
Sometimes TV or film critics will just fall in love with a certain performer or whatever and do what they can to announce to the world that they should check it out. And there's nothing wrong with that. We do that here on occasion. But as far as like viewing numbers, they weren't, there was no episode of the Tracy Ullman Show that was ever going to be like the MASH finale,
Right.
you know? Yeah. But anyway, I like I said, I always dug that type of humor, and while I am one of the people that understands that the show has kind of dipped in the quality that I come to expect from it, being that it has been on the air for so long, similar to Saturday Night Live, I think what I've come to recognize and have peace with is the fact that one, I should just be happy that it's still on, right? But two, I think people do come to The Simpsons. Their love of The Simpsons boils down to what first caught their eye. And so people that are catching it today with some of the newer stuff, they may look back on some of the episodes that I like and not really get it because the type of show that The Simpsons is doing now is kind of different than what it was when it first hit the air and within the first 10 years, you know?
Yeah, it was much more subversive back then, I think.
Yeah, yeah. But how about I start things off with my first choice of my favorite Simpsons episode?
Yes.
And the beauty of this, talking about Simpsons episodes, ones that we like, is that similar to our playlist episodes, we can always come back and revisit this because there are more than five that I like.
Mm-hmm.
And they have almost 800 episodes, but I will dive into my first choice here, and it's one that I've talked about on the show before many times. It's one that I think anybody honestly can relate to in some way, shape, or form. Me as a guy, I can relate to the male character in this particular story because I've been in his shoes many, 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 many times. But again, like I said, I think it is the human experience that makes this episode just one of their absolute best, and it's I Love Lisa. And that's the episode where Ralph Wiggum gets a pity Valentine's card from Lisa. She was the only one who gave him one. And, well, what was that? Oh, she gave him the one that says, I choose you.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, you choose me. And it was a picture of a train. Ralph Wiggum was so adorable in that episode. And I think I would say, even though I love some of the wackier Ralph stuff in later years, I do think they kind of dropped the ball by making him so stupid
Mm.
later on. Whereas in this episode, he was goofy and awkward, but still, you could picture in your head someone like Ralph Wiggum really existing as he was presented in that episode.
Yeah.
But I Love Lisa. What are your thoughts?
Well, I love it. I don't know that I knew it in particular before I met you, but I watched it with you because it is one of your favorite episodes. So now I just associate it with you and
Yeah. Yes, I'm forever Ralph. I do loved the little pep talk that Chief Wiggum gives Ralph, where he compares getting a woman to breaking a nut. And, he's using the barrel of his gun to crack open the nuts. And then there's one that doesn't open, so he gets pissed off and then shoots at the walnut. And let that be the lesson to the rest of you. Nuts.
What a good Wiggum impersonation.
Yeah, and then there was that line. How did you get mom, Dad? And he said, never underestimate the power of a man in uniform. And he sits back and then takes out a deep breath, and then his belly makes his shirt kind of rip open, and the buttons fly off, and he goes, "Oh yeah." But for my money, I think again this is one of the purest, most beautiful expressions of just that being that young and being that in love with somebody.
Hmm.
And what I also like about it too, if you think about it, like Ralph wasn't picking up the cues from Lisa that she wasn't really interested. But Lisa also should not have accepted the tickets to Krusty's 29th anniversary special. And so when Ralph did the whole, she's my girlfriend on live TV, and then she yelled at him, he did have a right to get pissed. But by the end of the episode, he got over it. and ended up becoming friends with Lisa. She gave him another card. It says, "Let's be friends," and there's a picture of a bee on it.
Right.
And I just really appreciated how positive it all was. It showed that, in relationships, you can be angry if someone hurts you, but it's okay to still like them, especially when it comes to, um, you know, potential romantic relationships and if they don't go through, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, if you don't have any other words on that, how about you dive into your first choice?
Okay, let me just dive in there.
Dive in deep.
So my first choice is Marge versus the Monorail, largely because I loved community theater growing up, and I was in a community theater production of The Music Man, which is what the episode is based on, the story of the episode. But the band is replaced by Monorail. It's so good. It has Phil Hartman. It has
Leonard Nimoy.
Leonard Nimoy.
Yeah.
Exactly, that's who I was thinking of. And all I can think of is that song, Monorail, Monorail, Monorail. It just really takes me back.
Well, the episode in question was written by one Conan O'Brien.
Interesting.
Yes, he's talked about the episode before, and he's brought up the fact that he's a fan of musicals and really loves The Music Man. I guess The Music Man is his all-time favorite musical, so he wanted a chance to have a little spoof on it. I've talked about Conan's work on The Simpsons before too, and I think this episode here was one of the first times to where they realized that they can go a lot more absurdist than they were.
Mm.
Because I think previously, before this, obviously it was a cartoon, there were gags and all that stuff, but it was still presented more like King of the Hill was presented, just a sitcom
Right,
type
just
of.
happened to be
Yeah,
animated.
yeah, but like this episode at the end of it, Leonard Nimoy gets beamed out, which obviously would not happen in real life type of deal. But so I think it showed, the people that run that show that we can go as crazy and as wacky as we want, and we can thank Conan O'Brien for that.
Conan is very wacky. I'd say perhaps the predominant characteristic of Conan O'Brien is wacky.
Yes, yes. I mean, like when we talked about him last, when we talked about his travel show, I forgot to bring up the fact that he worked on Saturday Night Live. In fact, the very first five timer sketch, what is that, you may ask? It's when a host reaches the achievement of hosting the show five times,
Right.
they quote unquote join the five timers club. And the first time they did that was a Tom Hanks episode, when he hosted for the fifth time, and Conan was actually the doorman for that particular sketch.
Oh.
And and he also wrote this sketch about. This is when some FCC rules were loosened in the late '80s, early '90s about what type of stuff you can talk about late at night.
Mm.
And so he wrote a sketch set in a nudist colony where a group of guys just ended up saying penis a lot. They were talking about their penises, like, my, that's a very nice penis that you have there. Wow. So yeah, he definitely is a little wacky, but I think he definitely, there have been a lot of people who said it on in terms of people that have actually worked on the show. Conan O'Brien was the guy that really helped make the Simpsons blossom into what people fell in love with and why we still love it today.
Cool.
All right. Any other thoughts on Marge versus the Monorail?
No, just don't ever buy a monorail.
That's right. All right, I'm going to go on to my next choice here, and this is a love letter to Phil Hartman.
Mm.
It is called A Fish Called Selma. It's a Troy McClure specific episode to where Troy ends up marrying Selma, and because he married Selma, he is actually able to get some new roles, whether it be in Hollywood or on Broadway again. And it's Phil Hartman at his absolute best, like when The press starts recognizing that he's with a woman because they make allusions to the fact that he has like sexual attractions to fish. I love that line where he's like in front of the paparazzi and he says, Troy's come back from the gutter and he's brought someone with him. You know? There's that. And of course, him singing in the Planet of the Apes musical.
Ah.
They're just absolutely brilliant. You know, I hate every ape I see from chimpanzee to chimpanzee. No, you'll never make a monkey out of me. Oh my god, I was wrong. It was Earth all along. You
Are you gonna
finally.
sing the whole thing?
I'm almost done. I mean, but now I can't go on. You cut me off. The show should be 5 minutes, Sam. Yes, Fish Called Selma.
Fish Called Selma.
What'd you think of that episode?
I loved that episode so much. I love Troy McClure. The fact that he is so washed up and has sunk so low as to marry Selma.
To get back into Hollywood, like he was hoping to get a role in the new McBain film, but ultimately
Mm.
did not by the end of it. But funny episode, people. I think easily one of Phil Hartman's best episodes on that show because they gave him a lot more to do than they normally did. What do I mean by that? Normally, when Troy McClure was in the episode, it was just for a quick bit.
Mm-hmm.
Same with Lionel Hutz. Maybe Lionel Hutz would have a little more to say than Troy McClure, but he wasn't the full focus of the episode. This was a time that they did that, and Phil Hartman was a genius. We lost him too soon.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. How about you dive into your next choice?
All right, my next choice is Homer Goes to College. So this is the episode where
Homer Goes to College?
Homer goes to college. I know it's hard to believe, but he's like missing some kind of certification that he's supposed to have in order to do his job as a nuclear power plant. And so he gets sent to college by Mr. Burns, which makes no sense whatsoever. Like, why wouldn't he just fire him and hire somebody who had certification? But anyway, it's The Simpsons, right? So you got to suspend your disbelief for sure, because there is nothing realistic about it.
Well, they did have a throwaway line, and I'm paraphrasing here, but it was, where Burns was talking about that Homer was hired under a certain program by President Ford, and Burns is like, "Thank you, President Ford," or Carter, or something. But anyway, go ahead.
Yeah.
Thank you for cutting me off, Tim.
Right. So, but he gets sent to college to the local college, and he basically sees college as a place you go to party, not where you go to like study and learn and get a degree. And so when he goes to college, it's all about how drunk he can be at all times.
Yeah, he starts off the episode by showing off his love for movies that resemble like the Revenge of the Nerd movies.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Obviously, you couldn't name those in particular, but that was like what, Professor Dondelinger or something. Yeah, yeah. And then this is also the episode where when Homer and Marge first arrive in the vehicle, Homer's in the passenger side and sees a group of students walking by, and Homer leans out the window and yells, "Nerds!"
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's just, classic Homer episode.
Indeed. Indeed, I agree.
Homer's just a dumbass.
Yeah. He's one of the best dumbasses in television.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
All right. Do you want me to go on to my next choice?
Yeah.
All right. My next choice, it would not be a discussion of The Simpsons. It would not be complete if we didn't have at least one Sideshow Bob episode.
It's true.
Sideshow Bob Terwilliger first debuted in the first season where Krusty was framed for a crime, but Bart and Lisa ended up solving it at the very end. This one right here, I think, is my absolute Sideshow Bob episode, and it's Cape Fear. Feare. Not like the movie Cape Fear. Kelsey Grammer, while he has very poor political beliefs, is a funny man. a very funny man. Like in this episode, they had that they had Sideshow Bob kind of recreating the whole movie theater scene from the Cape Fear movie.
Mm-hmm.
And then once they realize it's Sideshow Bob, Marge goes, "Would you stay away from my kids?" And he goes, "Oh, I'll stay away, all right. I'll stay away forever." And then goes, and then goes, "Oh wait, that's not right." And then he walks off, and then he comes running back, and he goes, "Marge, say that thing again one more time." And she goes, "No," and he goes, "Ugh." This was also the episode. Apparently, the script itself was kind of shorter than normal. So what they did to fill the time was a couple of gags. Like one after Sideshow Bob sneaks his way to the Simpsons' new place, where they became the Thompsons and lived on a houseboat. He strapped himself to the underneath of their vehicle. Once they all got into the houseboat, he unlatched himself and then spent a good minute stepping on rakes. Yeah, stepped on the rake and you know. And there was also another time in the episode where he also strapped himself to a bottom of a vehicle and then, told Bart, well, there's what could happen if you lie down in a city street. And then all of a sudden a parade occurred
Ah.
and people ended up stepping on him. Funny stuff. And then at the end, Bart defeats him by getting Sideshow Bob to sing the score of the HMS Pinafore. Once Bob's done, the boat crashes, and then you see like Chief Wiggum and two cops, but they're in robes, but they have their police hats on and guns. And you're lucky you came by this brothel. But
Classic.
the Cape Fear episode, or just Sideshow Bob in general, what are your thoughts?
Love both of them. The Cape Fear episode is so true to the original, but funnier. And yeah, I mean, you just remember it being under the car, going to the wherever the Simpsons are going.
Yeah, Horror Lake, I believe, or Terror Lake.
Terror Lake, yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, this is the one too, where the FBI agents tell them that they're going to become the Thompsons, and they go to Homer and they say, "When I say hello, Mr. Thompson, you say hello." Homer goes, "Check. Hello, Mr. Thompson." Nothing. And then they fast forward to what seems like hours. The rest of the family's like bored or asleep, and then the agent says, "Now when I step on your foot and say hello, Mr. Thompson, you say hello." "Okay. Hello, Mr. Thompson." Homer pauses, and then he turns to the other agent. "I think he's talking to you."
Such good gags.
Yes.
Uh,
Anyway, how about you dive into your next choice?
okay. My next choice, let me navigate to that area, is Homer Loves Flanders. Another Homer episode. He's like my favorite character, I think, that is of the family. Like, he's my favorite of the family. A lot of the side characters are my favorite characters, though. So, Homer Loves Flanders. Homer and Flanders become friends. It's really weird. And he gets these football tickets to the local football teams who are playing each other. And Homer is like pissed off that Flanders won the tickets, as he would be. But then Flanders offers him the extra ticket and to go with him. So he goes with him to the football game and has so much fun that he like really likes Ned. And I think he even gave him like a present, some like a football or something
No, you found out that Ned was friends with one of the players on the team, and the player on the team gave Homer the football.
from the game.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the
yeah,
game
yeah,
ball.
yeah. And so Homer just got really excited and started using his gratitude to drive Ned absolutely insane with gratitude. Just thanking him profusely, wanting to be with him all the time. Ned's my best friend kind of situation. And Ned had trouble because he's so nice. He couldn't set boundaries. And so it just got worse and worse and worse.
Until the blow up.
Till the blow up.
Yeah.
When Ned finally seems like a real person.
Yeah, been a while since I've seen this episode, so I know that obviously, as evidence, if you roll back a few minutes here, I remember a couple of plot points from it. It was not one that instantly springs to mind, so for any other scenes that I love, I don't have any other response to that one.
Gotcha.
Anything else you want to say?
Well, Flanders is a great character. He gets a little bit of his own medicine in this episode, right? Because he's usually so obnoxiously accommodating
Mm-hmm.
and nice to people. And then all of a sudden Homer is being really nice to them. But it's always all about what Homer can get out of a situation. He's very sly that way.
A sly fella, let me tell you.
Yes.
Agreed. Agreed. How about I go on to my next choice?
Okay.
All right, this is one that we ended up watching before we recorded. This was the first crossover episode that they ever did on the show. It included Jay Sherman from that short-lived cartoon, The Critic. Do you remember that one?
Yes.
What'd you think of The Critic? Let me guess you hated it.
No, I liked it.
Okay.
I only saw it 4 or 5 times.
Oh, but the 4 or 5 times was good.
Yeah, I thought it was funny.
Yes. The people that created that show,
I
Algie.
really liked John Lovitz, though.
Yeah, he's funny. The people that created that show, Algie and Mike Reese, initially, were writers on The Simpsons, went off to create The Critic. The Critic did not do so well, so they ended up coming back to the show. Algie actually still is the main producer on the show.
Hmm.
And the whole premise is that there is a need for the town of Springfield to get their reputation better. So Marge suggests they have a film festival. Everybody agrees. They get Jay Sherman to come along with it. And for me, the absolute funniest part of this episode is Hans Moleman Productions presents Man Getting Hit by Football. And then dink, that sound effect that they have on it gets me laughing every time. Once Homer sees it, of course, he dies laughing as well and says, "Oh, give that man the $10,000, thinking he's on America's Funniest Home Videos. Mr. Burns tries to make his own film with the non-union Mexican equivalent of Steven Spielberg, Steven Spielberg.
Yes. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Love that.
Yeah, ultimately does not get an Oscar or anything like that. This episode was kind of infamous too because Matt Groening was not a fan of the idea of a crossover. So if you noticed the credits at the beginning of the show, Matt Groening's name was not on there. The only time that has happened.
Damn.
Yeah, exactly. But what did you think of A Star Is Burns?
I loved it. I loved the Barney.
Pocahontas.
Right. Oh, God.
This is also the birth of, did you say boo or boo worms? And then boo, but then you had Hans in the back. I was saying boo worms. Lots of funny stuff in this episode. And yeah, John Lovitz could read the phone book and get you laughing hysterically.
Yes.
Yes. All right. How about you dive into your next choice?
Well, my next choice is going to be Homer at Bat. Another big Homer episode. And this one is like a sort of a classic sports movie kind of thing about, a blue collar nuclear power plant softball team and the rivalry with the neighboring nuclear power plant softball team. Right. And of course, Mr. Burns cannot let, the guys from the plant actually keep playing. He gets obsessed with baseball and so makes a $1 million bet that his team will win against the guy who owns the nuclear power plant, the other nuclear power plant, and they lose. Wait, no, they didn't lose. He makes the bet, and then he spends a bunch of money hiring a bunch of actual professional baseball players.
Yep.
Jose Canseco, uh,
Don Mattingly, Ken Griffey Jr., and this is at the very start of Ken Griffey Jr.'s career. So, he was in his early 20s. I believe Mark McGuire may have been in that one, or I. No. Mark McGuire came a few years after when he was with the St. Louis Cardinals and not with the Oakland A's at that particular time. But yeah, a lot of late 80s, early 90s baseball stars guest starred.
right. And so they're like the ringers.
But all of the ringers ended up having some calamity happen. Like Ozzie Smith from the St. Louis Cardinals was on the episode, and he went to the Springfield Mystery Spot, but the Springfield Mystery Spot was like this endless hole that he fell down in. One of the players actually wanted to do nuclear work, but then ended up getting radiation poisoning. Yeah, and then Ken Griffey Jr. Was given by Burns this special snake oil medicine, and he ended up enlarging his head because of it. And so the actual workers from the nuclear power plant actually had to be players on the team at the end. After all, they ended up winning because Homer was hit in the head by a pitch, and then he passed
Right.
out, and
Right. He was pinch hitting for somebody else.
yeah.
And he had this like weird wood thing that he was using as a bat
His yeah,
that got destroyed.
his special bat. Yeah,
His magic bat.
it was funny.
Yeah.
But to the point I was making earlier, this was at the time to where they were still making episodes that were somewhat more traditional than what they ultimately became as well. I mean, even though there was some wackiness and zaniness, like with the mystery hole or King Griffey Jr.'s head, it was still something that would fall in line with what a sitcom did. All right.
Yeah. Okay, let's hear your next one.
My next one is my last choice. And this is an episode called 22 Short Films About Springfield. And my absolute favorite part is, I believe it's somewhere near the middle, and it's like, some folk will never eat a skunk, but then again, some folk will, like Cletus, the slack-jawed yokel. And in his lines, like, hey, Brandine, you might could wear these to your job interview. And scuff up the topless dancing one way? Nah, you must bring it back where from you got 'em.
Where from you got him?
Okay, there you go. To waits for a woman of less discriminating taste. I mean, at the end of the day, like, if Cletus was not a white guy, the idea of Cletus would be looked down upon a lot more than it is. It is important, as we've talked about on the show before, to recognize that stereotypes are bad, no matter who they're directed at.
Yeah, I mean, it almost feels like punching down a bit on the Simpsons folks bit part.
Yes. Now, to be clear, it still gets a laugh from me, so I'm not trying to be like holier than thou, and I'm not going to look down on people that get a laugh from Cletus. It's still just important to recognize that because think back to that documentary Hillbilly. Where it goes into the history of how the whole hillbilly stereotype, came to be, and it has rather nefarious roots. Rich white people that, wanted to screw over poor people.
Yep. And as an Appalachian person, I feel like a kindred spirit with Cletus. I knew a lot of Cletuses.
Yeah, a lot of guys that would throw the boots back over the power line where he got them.
I don't know if
To waits for a woman of less discriminating
it tastes.
taste.
Yeah.
But Another classic episode, out of so many here. How about you dive into your last choice?
Okay. My last choice is kind of, I didn't choose a last choice. I chose a last sort of traditional character. Basically, Kang and Kodos from the Treehouses of Horrors episodes, who are the aliens with the tentacles, and they're always really funny. They're always very confused by the behavior of the humans. Their tentacles are so cool. Like, I love those tentacles. Like, those tentacles may be my favorite tentacles in the world. They're so cute, and they gesture with them.
All right.
They're cute.
Yeah. Imagine if you like tentacle porn. Anyway, not kicking Kodos.
Do you like hanging Kodos?
Of course, of course. And the Treehouse of Horrors. I don't have an issue with you kind of lumping them all together because, in a way, the Treehouse of Horrors is kind of separate from the Simpsons as a whole because different things can and will happen. Kang and Kodos have Star Trek to thank for their names.
Really?
Yes, they were Klingon characters by the name of Kang and Kodos that they ultimately brought back for Star Trek Deep Space Nine.
Oh.
So, yeah, a little bit of trivia there, but I remember, like the Treehouse of Horror one where they did a recreation of the Raven from Edgar Allan Poe.
Uh-huh.
In When I was a junior in high school, my English teacher ended up playing that episode and that little bit for the kids in class since we were talking about Edgar Allan Poe at that time, and because the Raven episode was pretty faithful. I mean, they read the poem, but threw in little gags and stuff at the end there, and Dan Greening, no, Dan Castellaneta, Dan Greening, what the hell? Homer Simpson as Homer Simpson gave one hell of a performance too, because if you think about it, like what Homer was doing in that particular episode wasn't Homer; it was Homer doing something else.
Mm.
And for a voice actor, that can be potentially difficult, but just knocked it out of the park. Really fun stuff. Do you have any specific stories that have been told in the Treehouse of Horrors that come to mind as some of your favorites? If you don't, you don't. I mean, I'm sure, if push comes to shove, you do. I'm putting you on the spot right now, so if you can't think of anything right now, that's fine. But
Yeah, I can't think of anything right now.
okay. Yeah, you'd never do that to me. You'd be like, I want an answer now.
Well, the thing is that they all kind of run together for me, which is why I said I'm just doing all of their appearances in all of the Tree Houses of Horror because, I remember the Poe one. It was awesome and amazing. And probably if you told me about them, I'd be like, oh, yeah, 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 yeah.
Exactly. And next time we talk about Simpsons episodes, I'm sure we can do a deeper dive in the Treehouse of Horror. That might be something to do for Halloween.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Yeah, I have them on occasion. Now we have it on record. I had a good idea. Yeah. But in closing, The Simpsons has a great legacy that is not going to be matched, at least for television. We are in a transition time in terms of how people consume their media. So, and the fact that we're also not like a monolithic culture anymore, the type of culture to where there is a big focus on a large group of people on one thing. We're a lot more fragmented. So the chances of a TV show of any kind going to the 40-year mark and beyond are slim at best. Is it impossible? By no means, because the moment I say it will never happen, it will happen. But it would be an end of an era when that show goes off the air.
Yes, it definitely will. Great show.
Indeed.
Well, how have you been doing, Tim?
I've been doing good, and I've kind of been going back and listening to bits of older episodes.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, older episodes of Friends Talking Nerdy. Now, I've told you because, recently we've celebrated our 400th episode, and I think I I think I came off as a little too harsh about the earlier episodes.
Mm.
Again, want to make it clear that, even though some of the episodes as presented when I first presented them 7 years ago would not be something that I would necessarily put out today. That doesn't mean I'm embarrassed by them or anything like that. It's just a creation thing. When you put out so many over such a long period of time, like the South Park guys, you're going to have your own opinions, even though other people will, may disagree with you, right?
Mm-hmm.
But one episode I wanted to kind of focus on here today is episode 46, and it was part 7.
Part 7
Of the Greatest Movie Ever Championship Tournament. 7 hours. The idea of the Greatest Movie Ever Championship Tournament, I will stand by that idea being good. I think it could be fun to have a tournament type of thing to where you have people defend, whatever, like their favorite movie or TV show or something like that. And then you have judges that will pick, whether person A or person B wins. I think it is a good idea, but for the resources that we had at that time, we shouldn't have done 64.
Yeah, that's a lot.
That is a lot. Yeah. It definitely was a lot. I could...
How many rounds is that to get to 1?
64, 32, 16, 8, 4, so 6 rounds.
So it was an hour a round plus an hour of extra.
No, it was 7 parts, so it was a little over 7 hours long, the whole experience.
Right.
Yes, so you can imagine how fun that was to listen to.
Now, did you guys do it all in one setting?
Oh yeah, the early days of the show, and as I mentioned before, we would normally just flip the microphone on and talk about, whatever topics. Like if we talked about Buffy the Vampire Slayer, for instance, which is in our archives, it was just talking bits and pieces of what we liked from each season.
Mm-hmm.
And then, just record everything. And then, like I mentioned, I would split it up and do it from there. When it came to the tournament itself, I won't get too into the weeds here, but there was a particular person that was involved that decided that they didn't feel like finishing the recording at that particular time. I'll leave it like that. So we ended up having to schedule the second part of the recording at a later date, which we ultimately did do. But I had to make a lot of accommodations to make that person available.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll leave it at that.
And you think that person is not a listener?
No, I doubt it. But I also don't want to throw shade and be super passive aggressive either. I think what I just said was a fair summation of explaining what happened without explaining what happened without calling people out,
Sure.
Yes. Wow, all this lovely talk about how horrible that experience was to get to this point here. I'm going to kick it to a little bit of audio from the end of that particular episode. So if you hang tight, we'll be right back in a moment. Folks, here we go. The winner of this tournament and new Friends Talking Nerdy Greatest Movie Ever champion is Tim Jousma with Planet of the Apes. And as you can hear, folks, that is a decision that is not held firm with the audience there. All right, Tim has grabbed his brand new championship belt and is heading up to the podium. He has some final comments he wants to tell the audience. Let's hear what he has to say.
I would just like to say, to a nicer guy, it couldn't happen. And you know what? When you have such great movie choices of mine, you know you can defeat anybody. So I issue a challenge right now. I challenge anybody in the back. If you have the cojones to face me and my superior movie choices, get your ass out here right now and get the beating of your life. How reprehensible can a human being get? They just won a great tournament like this. They have their hands on a championship belt that is prestigious in this industry, and they're issuing open challenges. And wait a minute, there's music. What is this? Oh my God, it's Luke Jasma. Luke Jasma's running to the ring and he has a chair. Tim is frightened beyond belief. He is trying to hide behind Mora right now of all the despicable things. But look at this. Mora elbows Tim in the face. She grabs him by the hair and throws him in Luke's direction. And look at this. Tim has been hit over the head with that chair. He collapses to the ground. Luke gets down on the ground and covers him for the pin. Ray runs into the ring to do the counting. 1, 2, 3, and the winner of the match and new Friends Talking Nerdy Greatest Movie Ever champion is Luke Jasma. And Luke is grabbing the microphone right now. He has something he wants to say to our vanquished champion.
Your movie choices suck.
Mora raises Luke's hand in victory, and Luke is showing everybody his new championship belt. And with that, we are finished with the first ever Friends Talking Nerdy Greatest Movie Ever Championship Tournament. Remember to subscribe to this podcast via iTunes, the Google Play Music Store, as well as Spotify. Also support us on Patreon. If you want to hear any and all back episodes, you can also go to our website, friendstalkingnerdy.com. We will see you all next week.
This audio clip here is something that it would be fun to try again in some way, shape, or form, because it was, in a way, kind of like a radio show. After I ended up winning that tournament, and I did legitimately win it, I ended it, with what you all just heard, and it was kind of presented as like a radio play to where I won. I was also the announcer, so it was weird, having two different, me in two different ways. But I thought it was really fun and funny. I did, do some research when I did record that particular bit, and found out how to, when I was, accepting my championship, I was able to adjust how it sounded to make it sound like you were talking like in a room with big echoes.
Right. I did notice that.
Yeah, kind of like a stadium. So I did some good work there.
You really did.
Yeah, and then
it's almost like green screen, but auditorily.
But just with your voice, yes.
Yeah.
And then ending it, of course, with my son Luke coming and hitting me in the head with a chair, and then ended up winning my championship belt after I challenged anybody from the back to come out so I could whip their ass.
Yeah.
Yeah. Always been the most humble person, Just ask me, right?
Right, just ask it.
But I wanted to be able to highlight that little moment again because I thought it was fun. And if there is a way to do something like that again on a smaller scale in terms of, doing something like the audio clip, not necessarily the 64 choice greatest movie ever championship tournament, it would be fun to try something again if it felt right. But I think the one critique I would offer myself, though, is to use a script.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, but you heard it. Any thoughts you want to say about that little clip or the greatest movie ever championship tournament as a whole?
Well, when we first met, I listened to pretty much every episode that had been made by that point, which was 80 or so, maybe.
A little over 80, yeah.
Yeah, and I remember these. And I did not listen to them. Like, I'd listened to a little bit of them, but it was just way too in the weeds for me. And it was like, you guys would talk about those movies, like, for a long time, and...
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I think the idea behind it has legs. I think it could be fun, but I also think unless we were talking like only a four-person tournament, for what we do today, I think that would be the only way we could pull that off in audio. But I think as far as like a video presentation, if you had the right resources available, I think it could be fun because it was just people ultimately either defending their choices seriously or like I remember there was one point where somebody was talking about a John Landis film and I was their opponent, and I came up and spent my 2 minutes talking about how John Landis, when they filmed The Twilight Zone, ended up having 3 people killed. So I was like, if you support this movie, you're supporting a murderer. A
Whoa.
child murderer. How dare you?
Whoa.
So it's like, yeah, it's like I said, I think the idea has legs, but for the resources that we had then and for the resources that we have now, audio wise, it wasn't the best of execution, which is why it never came back.
Yep.
Yeah, but
But
I'm
someday you can dream.
maybe someday my tournament will come. But again, wanted to be able to showcase that little bit of audio there to just pat myself on the back a little bit about some of the fun that has been had on this show in the past, and who knows, maybe someday I will do another little search in the archives and see if I can come up with something to talk about the show's history, because we've had a lot of good stuff that we've done here.
Yeah, we really have.
Yes, but there's been some bad stuff in the world of professional wrestling.
Yeah, we don't have to talk about this. We've already talked about this.
We talked. I had to talk in code because the moment I started kind of explaining what was happening, you were like, ew, ew, ew.
Well, I knew it was something bad because anytime it's wrestling, it's something bad. Like it's physically something bad.
Yeah. I know when we talked about wrestling last, you talked about it being violent, blood sport, and all that stuff. And with what you said, I I didn't necessarily agree with you, but I could see how you could come to that opinion as someone who's not really a fan, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because being a fan myself of professional wrestling since 1987, I have seen a lot over the years and have seen how easy it could be for some crazy, stupid stuff to happen, especially, you know, on the bigger stage on occasion. It's more so with the independent scene to where you have some of the really stupid stuff happening, like people hitting each other with light tubes and all that stuff. Like, they do all that. They, get thrown through glass. They get hit with wood and all that stuff. And then at the end of the match, they get their $40,
Right.
which is just stupid.
Yeah.
These are people that have probably seen like the Mankind versus the Undertaker Hell in a Cell match where Mankind gets thrown off the top of the cage and lands through the Spanish announce desk. And, which in and of itself, that should have been the end of everything right there. But, Undertaker and Mankind were both at minimum getting 6 figures, most likely 7 figures at that particular time, and obviously both had access to a lot better healthcare than some of, the people on the independent scene. But what I wanted to talk about happened on an episode of AEW Dynamite recently.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a critique. I will say that even though we've had, going back to our 400th episode, AEW referee Aubrey Edwards congratulating our show here, my critique is for what happened, that I'm going to talk about here, and not, other people that had nothing to do with that particular segment. Anyway, they had a match for the AEW World Championship between Jon Moxley, the champion, versus Adam Copeland, wants to be called Cope now. Adam Copeland spent a majority of his career in the WWE, but moved over to AEW because his friend, who goes by the name of Christian Cage, works for AEW, and basically wanted to wrap up his career with his friend, all well and good. But they had like a street fight type of match, which Jim Cornette calls lazy booking, because a street fight is, no rules type of deal. You can use weapons, and like, I kind of agree with him too about the lazy booking part, because it seems like some of the newer episodes of AEW I've seen has a lot of stuff like this going on in a lot of matches, which kind of numbs you as the audience to what's going on. If wild mayhem is happening in every match, it doesn't become wild mayhem anymore.
Right.
And you have to get bigger and bigger and bigger. And then it can lead you to doing stupid things, because halfway in this match, Jon Moxley pulls out this 2x4 that had about roughly 100, like, 12-inch carpenter's nails into the top of the board. And there was a point to where he tried to hit Cope with it. Didn't work out, but the board at one point was lying in the ring with the nails up. Cope suplexes a shirtless Jon Moxley onto that board, and the board stuck in his back. And it took well over a minute for them to get it out. And this is a show that is on national cable every Wednesday and on streaming on Max. And to the point that you made about professional wrestling, I think it is important for fans like me who do find value in it to point out stuff like this that is just fucking stupid. Because you can argue that, wrestling isn't ballet or anything like that, but if you saw the board in question and the nails in question, like, yes, these are quote unquote professionals, and you could see that, as far as the suplex went, most of the initial impact was like kind of on his butt hitting the mat and then his back kind of going, but like there was so much degree of error that could have went wrong. Like, the fact that it took them a while to take it out was disturbing as fuck. And like, I'm going to be that person now. I never thought I would be. Think of the children. Like, if you are presenting a product that children do attend, like, especially on a national level, like, you don't, doing that was just stupid. I'm sorry. Just fucking
Right,
stupid.
because that's absolutely something a kid is going to do.
A kid is going to do, or someone maybe slightly older, like the early 20s, that want to get into the world of professional wrestling, who think, oh, they did it on TV and look at the, awe from the crowd that they got. I will do it in this match that I'm going to get paid $40 for. And something goes wrong at that point, and they're the ones that don't have any sort of medical coverage or anything like that. It is proven. There are two things that are proven. One, there is an audience for that type of wrestling. It's just very small. That audience, like, think back in time, there was, in the 90s, a wrestling organization called ECW, Extreme Championship Wrestling. And they try as they might, they were never able to hit it big because of how salacious the storylines were, and also just similar type of activity in the ring. Just stupid nonsense that led to people getting hurt unnecessarily. I mean, wrestling isn't ballet, but you're dealing with, spikes, you're dealing with glass, you're dealing with whatever. Like, anything could happen. And it was just wrong. It was wrong. It was stupid. It should never have happened. The two wrestlers involved should be embarrassed with themselves for thinking that this was something that was appropriate to put on national television. Tony Khan should be embarrassed for himself for, how few people are actually watching his show now, but also for allowing that to happen. It's because wrestling at its best is storytelling. It's simulated violence, but it's telling a story of, good guy versus the bad guy. And it's a story that's told over time. And when done right, it's a beautiful thing. I mean, there's nothing like being in a crowd at a wrestling show and everybody's going nuts and cheering. Or, if you're at home and something major happens and, like me, plenty of times over the years, you're jumping up in front of your TV like, yeah, yeah. Or like I was as a kid, weeping. Wrestling can give you those great emotions. But just when I see stuff like this, it's just stupid. Just stupid. And it should not have happened.
I agree.
Yeah, so that's me being a responsible professional wrestling fan. Again, it's not ballet, and, violent things can and do occur, but, like, wrestling in a lot of ways is related to, magic. like your David Copperfields, your David Blaine's, people like that. It's a lot of it. It's supposed to be an illusion,
Right.
and once you start doing what they did, it takes that illusion away, and just at that point, it's just like, why are you really watching? So, those are my thoughts. I know your thoughts are, I wasn't going to watch it anyway, so fuck them.
Yeah, I mean, that's the kind of thing that turns me off. And I can watch it. I can be interested in the storylines.
Well, at minimum, though, I think, I think you said yourself, you have, thanks to me, thanks to a family member of yours that's a wrestling fan as well, you can, you have you understand why people get it. Still not your thing. You're not gonna, buy tickets for yourself to go see Monday Night Raw if they come to town again. But, you at least understand why people can enjoy it. But, to that point, I think for the people that do enjoy it, it is important to stand up and, proclaim to the hills when something stupid happens as well, because it just continues on with those stupid stereotypes that wrestling fans have, even though, wrestling fans are not all people that live in trailer parks and all that stuff.
That's right.
Who think it's real, damn it. But anyway, any other thoughts you want to say to our friends at home before we wrap things up?
I just hope that you have a great week.
All right. Great sentiment.
Huh?
Great sentiment.
Yeah. Let's all have a great week.
That's right. And then next week, you'll hear us again.
Every Monday.
Each Monday, we'll have something in this podcast space to entertain your ear holes. Until we meet again, we bid you adieu.
So long.
I was saying boo words.
Subscribe to Friends Talking Nerdy
on YouTube Music, Apple Podcasts, Spotify,
or wherever you listen to podcasts.
Goodbye, darling.